Don't let him choke. He can't breathe. Emily Carter's voice cut through the elegant restaurant as suddenly as a fire alarm, and for one frozen second, nobody seemed to understand what was happening. The soft piano music continued near the bar. Silverware rested beside half-finished plates. Crystal glasses caught the warm golden light. Yet around the private dining table, every conversation had stopped. Ethan Reynolds, the billionaire CEO whose name appeared on business magazines across the country, sat completely still in his chair. His face had gone pale, and his eyes searched the room as if waiting for someone to tell him what to do. A server stood nearby with a phone in her hand. Another employee called for the manager, but nobody stepped forward. Then Emily dropped the tray she was carrying. Porcelain plates landed safely on the carpet, but she barely noticed. She was already moving. At 29, Emily was used to being overlooked. She worked as a kitchen helper at the restaurant, arriving before sunrise, preparing ingredients, washing dishes, carrying supplies, and doing whatever needed to be done. She was also a single mother raising her 5-year-old daughter, Lily. That morning, she had checked her bank balance and seen $43 remaining. Her rent was due in 6 days. Lily needed new school shoes. Emily had spent the entire morning quietly calculating which bill could wait and which one could not. But when she saw Ethan struggling, every calculation disappeared from her mind. She pushed past the crowd, stepped behind Ethan's chair, and pulled him up slightly. "Give him some room," she said. Her voice was calm, even though her heart was racing. Mark Dalton, the restaurant manager, appeared seconds later. Emily stepped back. "Let the staff handle it." Emily looked at him, then at Ethan. She could see that something was seriously wrong, and she remembered the basic first aid training she had taken years earlier. It had been a simple course she completed after Lily was born, something she never imagined would matter again. "I know what to do," she said quietly. Ethan tried to respond, but he could not speak clearly. Emily stayed beside him, keeping her voice steady. "Look at me. Stay with me. Help is coming." The room seemed to shrink around them. Expensive suits stood shoulder to shoulder with restaurant uniforms. People who had been laughing only moments earlier now watched in complete silence. Emily focused only on Ethan. She wrapped her arms around his waist, made a fist just above his navel, and gave 3 quick upward abdominal thrusts. A piece of food dislodged onto the table, and Ethan gasped, drawing in air as someone called 911. A shaky breath, then another. Everyone seemed to breathe again. Someone said that emergency medical help was on the way. Emily finally allowed herself to breathe. She gave Ethan a small nod. "You're going to be okay." She did not know his net worth. She did not know he owned companies in 3 states. She did not know that dozens of people worked under him, or that his decisions could move millions of dollars. To Emily, he was simply a man who needed help. That was all. She started to stand, but Mark's voice stopped her. "Emily, my office." Now. She turned toward him, expecting perhaps a thank you or at least a quiet word of appreciation. Instead, his expression was tense. "Why?" she asked. Mark glanced toward the private dining room, then back at her. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" Emily looked at Ethan, who was now surrounded by employees waiting for the paramedics. "I helped him." Mark's jaw tightened. "You entered a private dining area, interrupted a VIP service, and took control of a situation you were not authorized to handle." Emily stared at him. He couldn't breathe. Mark said nothing for a moment. Then he opened the office door. "Come inside." Emily followed him, her hands still trembling slightly. She thought about Lily waiting for her at home. She thought about the $43 in her bank account. And she wondered why, after doing what she believed was the right thing, she suddenly felt as though she had made a terrible mistake. What Emily did not know was that the man she had just helped was far more important to the restaurant than she could have imagined. And before the day was over, she would learn exactly who he was. Emily sat quietly in the manager's office, listening to the faint sounds of the restaurant beyond the closed door. Plates clinked in the kitchen. A phone rang near the host stand. Somewhere outside, an ambulance siren faded into the distance. She could still feel her heartbeat in her chest, but she kept her hands folded in her lap. Mark Dalton remained standing behind his desk. "Do you understand how serious this was?" he asked. Emily looked at him. "I understand Mr. Reynolds needed help." Mark sighed as if she had missed the point. "You are a kitchen helper, Emily. You are not a medical professional. You were not assigned to that table. You should have waited for someone else." Emily lowered her eyes for a moment. There wasn't time to wait. Mark did not answer. He opened a drawer and pulled out a folder. "There are procedures for everything in this restaurant." Emily looked at the folder, then back at him. Would those procedures have helped him breathe? The question landed harder than she expected. Mark's expression tightened. Watch your tone. Emily immediately fell silent. She had learned that lesson long ago. When you were raising a child alone and living paycheck to paycheck, keeping a job sometimes meant swallowing words that wanted to come out. She thought about Lily. Her daughter had a habit of leaving tiny drawings inside Emily's lunch bag. That morning, Lily had drawn a yellow house with two people standing in front of it. Underneath, in crooked letters, she had written, "Mom and me." Emily had smiled when she saw it, then tucked the drawing beside the refrigerator where she could see it every morning. She had promised Lily that they would have a special dinner that evening, even if special only meant macaroni and cheese with extra cheese. Now she was not sure she would have a job by dinner. Mark closed the folder. You caused a disruption during a very important private meal. I was trying to help, and you did not know who that man was. Emily shook her head. No. Mark looked almost surprised. You really do not know? Should I? He leaned back in his chair. That was Ethan Reynolds. The name meant nothing to Emily at first. Then she remembered the business magazine she had seen near the restaurant register. A familiar photograph came to mind. Dark suit, calm expression, headlines about technology, investments, and companies expanding across the country. She looked toward Mark. The Ethan Reynolds? Yes. Emily glanced down at her uniform. The small stain on her sleeve suddenly seemed much more obvious. I did not know. That is exactly the problem, Mark replied. You should know who important guests are. Emily took a slow breath. He was a person who could not breathe. That was all I saw. Mark stared at her. For the first time, he seemed to have no immediate response. A knock came at the door. One of the servers stepped inside. The paramedics are here. Mr. Reynolds is being taken to the hospital for evaluation. Emily felt relief move through her. Is he okay? The server nodded. He is awake. Emily smiled faintly. That was enough for her. She stood and reached for the door. Can I go back to work? Mark stopped her. No, she turned. Why? He opened the folder again. I'm letting you go, effective immediately. Emily's face fell. I can't afford to lose this job, Mark. My rent. Then you should have thought about that before interfering with a VIP guest. Emily wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him that she had not planned any of this. She wanted to remind him that while everyone else stood frozen, she had been the one who moved. Instead, she simply nodded. I understand. She walked back through the kitchen. The same people who had watched the emergency now avoided her eyes. Emily collected her worn handbag from a locker and checked her phone. There was one new message from Lily's teacher. Lily had a wonderful day. She told everyone her mother is the bravest person she knows. Emily stared at those words for several seconds. Then she smiled through the worry gathering behind her eyes. She slipped the phone into her pocket and stepped outside. The afternoon air was cool against her face. Across town, Ethan Reynolds was waking up in a hospital room and asking the first question that would bring him back to the woman who had helped him. Where is the woman who helped me? Where is the woman who helped me? Ethan Reynolds asked again, his voice still weak but unmistakably determined. The nurse standing beside his hospital bed checked the chart in her hands. We are trying to find out, Mr. Reynolds. The restaurant sent someone to speak with the paramedics, but your employee did not stay. Ethan frowned. Employee. The word did not sound right. He remembered the woman who had knelt beside him, the calmness in her voice, the way she had told him to stay with her when everyone else seemed uncertain. He could not remember every detail of her face, but he remembered her eyes. Tired eyes. Kind eyes. Eyes that had looked at him as if he were simply a person who needed help. Find her, he said. I want to thank her. Across town, Emily Carter was standing in her small kitchen, staring at the refrigerator while Lily colored at the table. The apartment was quiet except for the scratching sound of a crayon moving across paper. Emily had changed out of her restaurant uniform and into an old gray sweater. She had placed her handbag on the counter, but she had not opened it. Inside was the envelope containing her work schedule, along with a small photograph of Lily that she carried everywhere. Mommy. Lily looked up. Are you still working tomorrow? Emily forced a smile. Not tomorrow, sweetie. Lily's expression changed immediately. Did something bad happen? Emily walked over and crouched beside her. No. I helped someone today. Lily smiled. Like when you helped me? Emily nodded. Exactly. Then why are you sad? Emily looked at her daughter for a long moment. That was the hardest question. Children could see what adults try to hide. Sometimes, Emily said softly, doing the right thing does not make things easy right away. Lily thought about that. Then she picked up another crayon and drew a bright yellow sun above her little paper house. But you still did the right thing. Emily smiled. Yes, I still did. At the hospital, Ethan sat near the window while his assistant, Daniel Brooks, entered the room with a tablet. "I have the restaurant report," Daniel said. Ethan looked up. "The woman." Daniel hesitated. "Her name is Emily Carter." Ethan repeated the name quietly. "Emily Carter. She is listed as a kitchen helper." Daniel scrolled through the information. 29 years old. She has worked there for about 14 months. No disciplinary issues. Ethan looked at him. Why would she be in the emergency report if she has no medical position? Daniel gave a small, thoughtful smile. Because apparently she was the only person who knew what to do. Ethan looked toward the window. "And where is she now?" Daniel's expression became more serious. "That is complicated." Ethan turned back. "What does that mean?" "According to the manager, Emily caused unauthorized disruption. He suspended her on paper, but kicked her out of the building." Ethan's expression changed. "Suspended. That is what the manager reported." Ethan slowly leaned back against the hospital pillow. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he asked, "Did she ask for anything?" "No money." "No, a promotion?" "No." Ethan looked genuinely puzzled. "Then why did she help me?" Daniel smiled faintly. "Maybe because you needed help." The simple answer stayed with Ethan. He had spent most of his adult life surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Advice, contracts, access, investments, favors. Yet a woman who had every reason to keep walking had stopped without knowing his name. Ethan looked down at his hands. "Give me the security footage." Daniel nodded. "All of it. Every second from the moment she noticed me." Back at the apartment, Emily tucked Lily into bed and kissed her forehead. "Good night, brave girl." Lily reached for her hand. "Good night, brave mommy." Emily turned off the light and walked into the living room. Her phone buzzed. She expected another message from the restaurant. Instead, there was an unfamiliar number. She opened it. "Ms. Carter, this is Daniel Brooks. I represent Ethan Reynolds. He would like to speak with you when you are available." Emily stared at the message. She had no idea why the billionaire CEO wanted to speak with a kitchen helper who had just lost her job. Then another message appeared. "He remembers you." Emily's fingers stopped above the screen. For the first time that evening, she wondered whether the man she had helped was about to change her life. The next morning, Emily woke before the alarm. For several seconds, she lay still in the darkness, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the soft breathing coming from Lily's room. Then she remembered the message. "He remembers you." She reached for her phone on the nightstand and read it again. Ethan Reynolds wanted to speak with her. Emily had spent most of the night wondering why. She had not asked for money. She had not expected recognition. She had not even known his name until after she left the restaurant. Yet somehow, a billionaire CEO was now looking for her. At 7:30, Emily made Lily a bowl of oatmeal, packed a small lunch, and tied her daughter's shoes before walking her to school. She tried to act normal, but her thoughts kept returning to the same question. What did he want? When Emily returned home, her phone rang. "Ms. Carter," a calm male voice asked. "This is Daniel Brooks, Mr. Reynolds' assistant. I hope I am not calling too early." "No, it is fine." Emily sat at the small kitchen table. "How is he?" "He is doing well. The doctors want him to rest, but he is already asking too many questions." Emily smiled despite herself. "That sounds like a good sign." Daniel gave a quiet laugh. "It probably is. Mr. Reynolds would like to meet you this afternoon. He can arrange transportation if that would make things easier." Emily immediately shook her head, even though Daniel could not see her. "No, thank you. I can get there myself." "Of course. I will send you the address." When the call ended, Emily stared at the phone. She looked around the apartment. The faded couch, the small dining table, Lily's drawings taped beside the refrigerator. Everything suddenly felt unusually ordinary. A few hours later, Emily arrived at the hospital wearing the nicest outfit she owned, a simple navy blouse and black pants. She stood outside Ethan's room for several seconds before knocking. "Come in," a voice said. Ethan was sitting near the window, dressed in a dark sweater instead of the tailored suit she had seen the day before. He looked tired, but much better. Daniel stood nearby with a tablet in his hand. Ethan looked up. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Ethan smiled. "Emily Carter." She nodded. "Mr. Reynolds. Please call me Ethan." Emily hesitated. "All right, Ethan." He gestured toward the chair. "Please sit." Emily sat carefully, keeping her handbag on her lap. Ethan studied her for a moment, not in judgment, but with genuine curiosity. "I wanted to thank you." Emily gave a small smile. "You don't have to thank me." "I do." His voice was quiet. "You helped me when you had no reason to know who I was." Emily looked down. "I saw someone who needed help." Ethan leaned back. "That is exactly what I keep thinking about." He paused. "Most people in that room knew my name. You did not. Most people knew what I was worth. You did not. And somehow, you were the one person who moved. Emily did not know how to respond. She simply said, I would have done the same for anyone. Ethan smiled. I believe you. Daniel stepped forward and placed a tablet on the table. There is something else you should know. Emily looked at him. He turned the screen toward her. It showed footage from the restaurant security cameras. Emily watched herself entering the dining area, helping Ethan, and staying beside him until assistants arrived. Then the footage continued. She saw herself walking into Mark's office. She saw herself leaving through the back door with her handbag. Emily looked away. Why are you showing me this? Ethan answered. Because I saw it too. His expression became more serious. And I learned that you were suspended because of what happened. Emily swallowed. It wasn't just a suspension, Ethan. He fired me on the spot. Ethan looked at Daniel. Daniel nodded. The restaurant manager ended her employment later that afternoon. Ethan turned back to Emily. You were fired after helping me? Emily gave a small, tired smile. That's what happened. Silence settled between them. Then Ethan asked the question Emily had not expected. What do you need right now? She looked at him carefully. I need to take care of my daughter. Ethan nodded slowly. Then let's talk about your next steps. Emily looked at Ethan across the quiet hospital room, unsure what he meant by what happened next. She had expected a simple thank you. Maybe a handshake. Maybe a polite offer to cover her lost shift. She had not expected him to speak as if her future had suddenly become part of his concern. I don't want charity, she said carefully. Ethan nodded without hesitation. I understand. And I don't want anyone thinking I got special treatment because I helped you. Ethan looked at her for a moment, then gave a faint smile. That tells me more about you than anything on that security recording. Emily glanced toward Daniel. So why am I here? Ethan folded his hands in front of him. Because I watched what happened. I saw you make a decision when everyone else was waiting. Then I learned that you lost your job because of that decision. Emily looked down at her handbag. It was my choice. Was it? Ethan asked gently. She looked back at him. What do you mean? You chose to help me. You did not choose to be punished for it. Emily had no answer. Ethan continued. I spoke with the leadership team of the hospitality company that owns the restaurant this morning. Her expression changed. You did? Yes. Daniel placed a document on the table. The restaurant is owned by Reynolds Hospitality Group, the company I lead. Emily glanced at the papers, but did not touch them. What did they say? They are reviewing the manager's decision. Ethan paused. But I do not want you to return there simply because of me. Emily finally picked up the document. Then what are you offering? Ethan leaned forward slightly. A position with one of my companies. Not because you saved my life. Because I believe your judgment, composure, and character are valuable. Emily stared at him. I work in a kitchen. You also kept a room calm during an emergency when trained staff were uncertain. That doesn't make me qualified for a corporate desk job. Then we find a position that does. His answer was so simple that Emily almost laughed. You make it sound easy. I can make an opportunity easier to reach. I cannot make the work easy. That part would be yours. Emily looked at the offer again. The salary was higher than anything she had ever earned. The benefits included health insurance. There was also a schedule that would allow her to leave work in time to pick Lily up from school. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the paper. For a moment, she imagined what that could mean. No more calculating whether groceries would last until Friday. No more checking the gas gauge before deciding whether she could drive across town. No more pretending that everything was fine when Lily asked why they could not replace her worn school shoes. Then Emily slowly placed the document back on the table. I need time. Ethan nodded. Take it. She stood, but before she reached the door, Ethan spoke again. Emily. She turned. Thank you. Not because I am a CEO. Not because I can change your circumstances. Thank you because when you saw me struggling, you did not stop to ask what I could do for you. Emily's expression softened. I hope you would have done the same. Ethan smiled. I would like to think so. She left the room with the offer still on her mind. In the hospital hallway, Daniel caught up with her. You know, most people would have accepted immediately. Emily smiled politely. Most people do not have a daughter waiting for them at home. Daniel nodded. What is her name? Lily. How old? 5. Daniel smiled. Then I understand. Emily walked toward the elevator, but before the doors opened, she heard Ethan's voice from inside the room behind her. Daniel, there is one more thing. She did not hear the rest. Upstairs, Ethan looked at the security footage again. This time, he watched the final moments before Emily left the restaurant. He noticed something he had missed before. She had paused beside the employee entrance, looked back toward the dining room, and then walked away alone. Ethan turned to Daniel. Find out what her situation is. I want to understand what she is carrying. Daniel looked surprised. Do you want me to offer her more money? Ethan shook his head. No. I want to understand what she is carrying. At that exact moment, Emily stepped into the elevator, unaware that the man she had saved was no longer simply trying to thank her. He was beginning to understand the life behind the woman in the kitchen uniform. By late afternoon, Emily was sitting at the small kitchen table in her apartment, the job offer from Ethan Reynolds resting beside a cup of untouched coffee. Lily was still at school, and for the first time in months, Emily had a few quiet minutes to think without someone needing something from her. She read the offer again. The salary was more than she had expected. The health insurance would take away one of her biggest worries. The schedule would allow her to pick Lily up from school. It was everything she needed. And somehow, that made accepting it harder. Emily did not want to become a story people told because she had saved a billionaire. She wanted to be hired because she could do the work. She folded the papers carefully and placed them inside a drawer. Then she heard a knock at the door. Emily froze. Nobody usually visited without calling first. She walked over and opened it halfway. Daniel Brooks stood in the hallway, holding a small envelope. Sorry to drop by without much notice, he said. I hope this is all right. Emily opened the door a little wider. Is Ethan okay? He is doing well. He was discharged from the hospital this afternoon. Emily smiled with relief. That is good. Daniel handed her the envelope. He asked me to give you this. Emily looked down. What is it? An invitation. She opened it carefully. Inside was a simple card with an address and a time. Dinner? Emily asked. Daniel nodded. He wants to thank you properly. Emily immediately shook her head. I don't think that's necessary. He expected you to say that. Daniel smiled. He also asked me to tell you that this is not a business meeting. Emily looked at the invitation again. Then what is it? He said he wants to meet Lily. Emily's expression changed. Why? Daniel answered honestly. Because he knows that everything you do begins with her. That sentence stayed with Emily long after Daniel left. She had spent years protecting Lily from uncertainty. She did not bring strangers into their lives easily. She did not accept favors without understanding the reason behind them. But something about Ethan felt different. Not because he was wealthy. His money was exactly what made her cautious. She decided that if she went, Lily would come with her. The following evening, Emily and Lily arrived at a quiet restaurant across town. It was elegant but comfortable, with warm lights, soft music, and large windows overlooking the city. Ethan was already waiting. He stood when they entered. Emily. Then he looked at Lily and smiled. And you must be Lily. Lily held tightly to her mother's hand. Yes. Ethan crouched slightly, so they were closer to the same height, but he did not reach for her. It is nice to meet you. Lily studied him carefully. Are you the man Mommy helped? Emily's eyes widened. Ethan smiled. I am. Lily nodded seriously. Mommy helps people a lot. Ethan looked at Emily. I am starting to understand that. They sat together at a quiet table. Ethan ordered something simple for Lily and asked Emily what she preferred. Emily noticed that he did not make decisions for her. He asked. He listened. He waited. It was a small thing, but she noticed. During dinner, Lily talked about school, her favorite color, and the yellow house she had drawn for her mother that morning. Ethan listened as though there were nowhere else he needed to be. At one point, Lily looked at him and asked, Are you really rich? Emily nearly dropped her fork. Lily. Ethan laughed softly. It is all right. He thought for a moment. Yes, I suppose I am. Lily considered this. Then why did Mommy have to work so much? The table became quiet. Emily looked down, embarrassed. Ethan did not look away. That is a very good question, he said. And I do not have a good answer yet. Emily looked at him, surprised by his honesty. Later that evening, after Lily had fallen asleep in the back seat on the ride home, Emily received a message from Daniel. Mr. Reynolds reviewed the restaurant footage again. Emily stared at the screen. A second message appeared. He found something important. Her heart began to beat faster. She called Daniel immediately. What did he find? There was a pause before Daniel answered. The manager's report left out part of what happened. Emily sat up. What part? Daniel lowered his voice. The footage shows Mark Dalton speaking to you before you entered the dining room. He told you to stay in the kitchen. You chose to step forward because you saw that Mr. Reynolds needed help. Emily remembered the moment. Yes, I did. But that is not all, Daniel said. After you helped Ethan, Mark did something else. Emily's grip tightened around the phone. What did he do? Daniel paused. He left out an important part of what happened before the corporate office received the report. He changed the story? Emily repeated, unable to hide the disbelief in her voice. Daniel was silent for a moment. Yes. The original security footage tells a different story from the report Mark submitted to corporate. Emily sat at the edge of her bed, the room quiet around her. Lily was asleep in the next room, and the apartment was lit only by the small lamp beside the couch. "What did he say?" she asked. Daniel answered carefully. "He reported that you entered the private dining area without permission, interfered with the staff response, and created confusion during an important guest service." Emily closed her eyes. "But that is not what happened." "I know," Daniel said, "and now we have the footage to prove it." Emily looked toward the hallway where Lily was sleeping. She thought about the hours she had spent wondering whether she had made the wrong decision. She had replayed that moment in her mind again and again. If she had stayed in the kitchen, perhaps she would still have her job. If she had followed Mark's instruction, perhaps her life would have been easier. But then she remembered Ethan sitting helplessly at the table and the quiet moment when he finally breathed again. She knew she would make the same choice. "What happens now?" she asked. "Mr. Reynolds wants to meet with Mark tomorrow morning." Emily's expression tightened. "Because of me?" "Because of the truth." The next morning, Ethan arrived at the restaurant shortly after 8 o'clock. The dining room was nearly empty. Morning sunlight stretched across the polished floor, turning the windows bright gold. Mark Dalton stood near the host's desk, visibly uncomfortable. He had received the call from corporate the night before. He knew Ethan had seen the footage. What he did not know was how much Ethan had learned. Daniel walked beside Ethan carrying a folder. Ethan did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Good morning, Mark." "Good morning, Mr. Reynolds." Ethan looked around the restaurant. "I have been told you submitted the incident report." "Yes." "And you stand by it?" Mark hesitated. "Based on what I saw at the time, yes." Ethan placed the folder on the counter. "Then you should have no problem reviewing the footage with me." Mark looked at the screen as Daniel played the recording. There was Emily, carrying the tray. There was Ethan at the table. There was the moment Emily noticed something was wrong and immediately stepped forward. Then came the conversation Mark had with Emily before she entered the dining area. His own voice was clear. "Stay in the kitchen." Emily had looked toward Ethan and replied, "He needs help." Mark watched the recording in silence. Ethan turned toward him. "Why did your report leave that out?" Mark swallowed. "I was trying to protect the restaurant." "From what?" "From liability. From confusion. From an employee acting outside her role." Ethan looked at him steadily. "She acted because you did not." Mark looked down. Ethan continued, "You were standing less than 10 feet away." The room became very quiet. Mark finally said, "I made a judgment call. And then you fired her." "I thought it was necessary." Ethan nodded slowly. "That is the part one find difficult to understand." Mark looked up. "Mr. Reynolds, I did not know she was going to become important to you." Ethan's expression changed. "This has nothing to do with whether she is important to me." He paused. "It has to do with whether she was treated fairly." Mark had no answer. Ethan turned to Daniel. "Send the full footage to corporate." Daniel nodded. "Already done." Ethan looked back at Mark. "There will be an independent review of your decision. Until then, corporate will handle all personnel decisions involving Emily Carter from this point forward." Mark's face fell. Ethan picked up the folder and walked away. He did not celebrate. He did not threaten anyone. He simply left the truth where it belonged. Later that morning, Emily received a call from Daniel. "The company has reviewed the footage," he said. "The decision to terminate your employment has been formally reversed." Emily stood beside her kitchen window, holding a mug of coffee. "What does that mean?" "It means your wrongful termination is officially overturned." Emily was quiet. "Do I have to go back there?" "No," Daniel said. "Mr. Reynolds specifically said the choice is yours." Emily looked down at the street below. For the first time since losing her job, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Relief. Then Daniel added, "There is one more thing." Emily waited. "Ethan wants to see you today." She smiled faintly. "Why?" Daniel answered. "He said there is something he needs to tell you himself." "I don't want you going back there," Ethan said. Emily looked at him across the quiet office, surprised by how quickly he had answered. She had expected another offer, another explanation, perhaps another reminder that he had changed the decision at the restaurant. Instead, he looked almost uncomfortable. "Why?" Emily asked. Ethan took a slow breath. "Because getting your old job back is not the same as getting a fair chance." Emily remained silent. Daniel stood near the window, giving them space. Ethan continued, "I spoke with the ownership group this morning. Mark's report has been corrected. Your termination is being reversed. But I do not want that to be the end of this." Emily folded her hands in her lap. "What do you want?" "I want to offer you a different opportunity." He placed a folder on the table. Emily looked at it, but did not reach for it. "Another job?" Yes, with one of my companies. She hesitated. I already told you I'm not looking for a handout. And I already told you this is not charity. Ethan opened the folder. Inside was the same position he had mentioned before, but now there were more details. A stable salary, health insurance, paid time off, a schedule that would allow her to pick Lily up from school. Emily read each line carefully. She had never been offered benefits like these. What would I be doing, she asked. Working with our hospitality operations team. You understand restaurants. You understand what happens behind the dining room. You know what employees need because you have been one of them. Emily shook her head. I am not an executive. Ethan smiled slightly. Neither was I when I started. She looked up. That is different. Maybe. He paused. But I'm not asking you to be someone you're not. I am asking you to bring the judgment you showed that day into a place where it can help people. Emily looked down at the offer again. Her mind went immediately to Lily. She imagined school mornings without rushing. She imagined being able to replace the shoes that had become too tight. She imagined opening the refrigerator without wondering whether there would be enough groceries for the week. Then another thought came. What happens if people find out why you hired me? Ethan answered without hesitation. They will. Emily looked at him. And they will assume I got the job because I saved you. Then they can assume whatever they want. Your work will speak for itself. She studied his face, searching for any sign that he expected something in return. There was none. Why are you doing this? She finally asked. Ethan looked toward the window. The city moved quietly below them. Because I have spent years measuring people by what they can contribute to my company. That day, you reminded me that sometimes a person's value has nothing to do with their position. Emily smiled faintly. That sounds like a lesson you already knew. Ethan shook his head. I knew the words. I did not always understand them. The room became quiet. Emily closed the folder. I want to earn this. Give me an interview like any other candidate. Ethan smiled. An interview? You don't think you've proved yourself already? Emily looked him in the eye. You said you wanted to give me a fair chance. Let me earn it. Ethan smiled. All right. Monday morning at 9. Let's see what you've got. Emily laughed softly for the first time that day. All right. As she stood, Ethan added, there is one more thing. She turned. What? Let's keep this between us for now. Emily nodded. Of course. She reached the door, then stopped. Ethan, yes. Thank you. He smiled. You already thanked me by coming here. Emily left the office and walked toward the elevator. She felt lighter than she had in days. But she also knew her life had not suddenly become perfect. She still had bills. She still had a daughter depending on her. She still had to prove herself. But for the first time, someone powerful had not looked at her and seen a poor single mother. He had seen a capable woman who deserved an opportunity. That evening, Emily returned home and found Lily sitting at the kitchen table with a drawing in front of her. Mommy, look. Emily picked it up. It showed two people standing beneath a bright yellow sun. Beside them was the little yellow house Lily had been drawing for weeks, now standing beneath a bright sun. Who is this? Emily asked. Lily pointed to the taller figure. That is the man you helped. Emily smiled. And why is he there? Lily shrugged. Because you helped him. Emily looked at the drawing for a long moment. Then her phone buzzed. It was a message from Daniel. Your interview is scheduled for Monday morning. Emily read it twice. Beneath the message was another line. Ethan asked me to tell you that he hopes you will surprise him. Emily smiled. She looked at Lily, then at the drawing again. Neither mother nor daughter knew it yet, but Monday would not simply be an interview. It would be the first step into a life Emily had never imagined for herself. Sometimes the smallest act of kindness becomes the doorway to a completely different life. Monday morning arrived quietly, but Emily Carter had been awake for nearly an hour before her alarm. She stood in front of the mirror wearing the same navy blouse she had worn when she first met Ethan Reynolds, smoothing the sleeves and checking her reflection one last time. Nothing about her appearance suggested that she was walking into an interview with one of the most powerful business leaders in the country. She was still the same single mother who counted grocery money carefully and kept Lily's drawings beside the refrigerator. But something inside her had changed. She was no longer walking into the building hoping someone would give her a chance. She was walking in ready to earn it. At 9 o'clock, Emily entered Ethan's headquarters in downtown Chicago. The lobby rose several stories above her, filled with glass walls, polished stone, and people moving with quiet purpose. Emily tightened her grip on her handbag and approached the reception desk. I am here for an interview with Daniel Brooks. The receptionist checked the schedule and smiled. He is expecting you. A few minutes later, Daniel appeared. Good morning, Emily. Good morning. He led her upstairs to a conference room overlooking the city. Ethan was already there. He stood when she entered. Good morning. Emily smiled. Good morning. This time, neither of them seemed nervous. The interview lasted nearly an hour. Ethan did not ask about the moment she had saved him. He asked about restaurants. He asked what employees struggled with. He asked what managers often misunderstood about kitchen staff. Emily answered honestly. She told him that people in the kitchen were often expected to work faster without being given enough information. She explained that small scheduling changes could create enormous problems for parents. She talked about how customers saw a polished dining room, but rarely thought about the people working behind it. Ethan listened carefully. At the end, Daniel closed his notebook. You have never worked in corporate operations before. Emily nodded. That is true. Ethan asked. Then why should we hire you? Emily took a breath. Because I know what it feels like when a person at the top makes a decision that affects someone at the bottom without understanding what their life looks like. I don't know corporate buzzwords, but I know how to listen to the people on the front lines. I know how to work. And if you give me a problem, I will not pretend I understand it before I ask the people living with it. Silence filled the room. Ethan looked at Daniel. Daniel smiled. Ethan turned back to Emily. That is exactly what I was hoping you would say. 3 weeks later, Emily began her new position. The first days were difficult. There were unfamiliar systems, long meetings, and more paperwork than she had ever imagined. But she learned quickly. She asked questions. She listened. She took notes. And slowly, people began to notice something Ethan had already seen. Emily did not walk into a room trying to prove that she was important. She walked in trying to make things better. At home, life began changing in smaller ways. Lily received a new pair of school shoes. Emily no longer checked her bank balance before buying groceries. She could pick Lily up from school on time, and on Friday afternoons they began walking to a nearby park together. Ethan remained part of the story, but never in a way that made Emily feel indebted to him. He checked on her progress occasionally, sometimes leaving a simple message asking how the new position was going. Their conversations slowly became less formal. One evening, Ethan visited the restaurant where Emily had once worked. The same dining room looked different now. Mark Dalton was no longer managing the restaurant. Corporate had completed its review, and the company had changed its procedures for handling emergencies and employee concerns. Ethan stood near the entrance and watched the staff move through the room. He remembered the day everything changed. He remembered Emily dropping that tray and running toward a stranger because she believed helping mattered more than following a rule. Later that evening, Ethan found Emily outside the building. Lily was beside her, holding a small paper bag. What is that? Ethan asked. Lily smiled. Cookies. She held out the bag. Mommy and I baked them for you. Ethan looked at Emily. For me? Emily nodded. You helped us once. We thought we could return the favor. Ethan accepted the bag with a smile. He looked at Lily, then at Emily. Thank you. Lily suddenly asked. Are you still rich? Emily laughed. Ethan smiled. Yes. Lily thought about it. But Mommy is rich too. Ethan looked at Emily. She is? Lily nodded confidently. She has the biggest heart in the world. Ethan looked down at the little bag of cookies in his hands. Then he looked back at Emily. For once, he had no clever answer. He simply smiled. Emily smiled back. No promise was made. No grand declaration was needed. Some lives change through enormous decisions. Others change through one quiet moment when a person chooses kindness without knowing whether anyone will ever notice. Emily had saved Ethan when she believed he was simply a stranger who needed help. Ethan had opened a door for Emily because he finally understood what that kindness was worth. And somewhere between those two moments, both of them learned the same truth. Money can create opportunities, but it cannot create the human goodness that makes those opportunities meaningful. Emily had not saved a billionaire that day because she knew who he was. She saved him because she knew who she was. And sometimes, that is where a new life begins.